The air was thick with heat, the scent of expensive perfume and wine swirling in the dimly lit room. My body was pressed against hers, soft lips moving hungrily against mine. The world outside these walls no longer existed. No husband, no vows, no guilt. Just the raw, undeniable need between us. Trinity's fingers gripped my hips, nails digging into the fabric of my dress, as she pushed me back against the wall. My breath hitched as her mouth moved down my neck, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. "You've wanted this for a long time, haven't you?" she murmured against my skin, her voice thick with amusement and something darker. I couldn't answer, could barely think. My hands tangled in her dark waves, pulling her closer, needing more. She smirked against my collarbone, her fingers sliding beneath the thin straps of my dress, easing them down my shoulders, sending a shiver through me. "Did you?" I should have said no. Should have pushed her away. Instead, I let her strip the dress from my body, the silk pooling at my feet as her hands roamed freely, claiming me as hers. I was already gone. Hours earlier, the party had been nothing short of extravagant. A sea of glittering gowns and tailored suits. But I wasn't listening. My gaze had been drawn to her the moment she walked in, Trinity in a blood-red dress that clung to her every curve, her dark hair cascading in waves over one shoulder. She carried herself with the kind of effortless confidence that made people stop and stare, but it wasn't just that. It was the way she looked at me, like she already knew what I wanted before I did. Her perfume intoxicating. "Do you always let him keep you on such a short leash?" My breath caught. "Or," she continued, her voice dropping an octave, "do you sometimes like to slip away?" Away from prying eyes. Now my back arched as her mouth moved lower, her hands gripping my thighs, parting them with ease. I was lost in the sensation, drowning in her touch. A whimper slipped past my lips as she pinned my wrists above my head, her body pressing me deeper into the mattress. The power she held over me was terrifying, addictive, and I never wanted it to end. Time blurred, the room filled with nothing but our ragged breaths, and the sound of sheets tangling beneath us. I didn't care about consequences, about the man who would be waiting for me at home. For the first time in my life I felt free. When it was over, I lay there in the dark, my body still humming with pleasure. "I'll take that as a no." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to sit up. This was a mistake. She laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, sweetheart." She reached for my chin, tilting my face toward hers. "You don't regret it." I couldn't bring myself to lie. Her lips brushed mine once more, a teasing farewell. "You'll come back to me," she murmured. "They always do." I wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The morning light streamed through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow over the tangled sheets. My body ached in the most delicious way, a lingering reminder of the night before. Trinity was still asleep beside me, her bare back rising and falling with steady breaths. For a moment, I allowed myself to watch her, to admire the sharp lines of her shoulder blades, the way her dark hair spilled over the pillows. She looked so peaceful. The reality of the situation hit me with full force. I had betrayed Noah. Not just emotionally but in the most primal, unforgivable way. My hands trembled as I combed my fingers through my hair. "Afraid of how much you liked it." I shivered under her touch. She was right, and that terrified me even more. She leaned in, her lips ghosting over my jawline. "You're going to think about me every time he touches you." Her breath was warm against my skin, sending a pulse of heat straight through me. "And when that happens, you'll come back." I hated how easily she read me, how effortlessly she unraveled me with just her words. I pulled away abruptly, wrapping the robe tighter around myself. "This was a mistake." She laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, sweetheart, you're not fooling anyone, least of all yourself." I didn't stay to argue. I grabbed my dress, my purse, and hurried out the door before I could let her words sink in any deeper. By the time I reached home, my stomach was in knots. I took a shaky breath before stepping inside, half expecting Noah to be awake, waiting for me with 1,000 questions. But the house was silent. Too silent. I tiptoed upstairs, my heart pounding with every step. Disheveled and undone. My lips were still swollen, my skin still flushed from Trinity's touch. I turned on the faucet, splashing cold water on my face as if that could wash away my sins. But no amount of water could erase what I had done. The worst part? I didn't regret it. I avoided Trinity for days, ignoring her texts, her calls. But her voice was still in my head. Her lips painted the same deep red that had been smeared against my skin just days ago. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her with deliberate slowness. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. She chuckled, her fingers slipping beneath the hem of my blouse. That's what I thought. And just like that, my resolve crumbled. Her lips claimed mine, and I let myself drown in her all over again. The air in the room was thick with tension, heavy with the scent of sweat and lingering desire. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stood frozen, caught between my husband's piercing stare and the smirk that still curved Trinity's lips. She was completely unbothered, lying in my bed like she belonged there. Like she had no reason to feel guilty. Noah took another slow drag of his cigarette, the orange ember glowing in the dim light. His calmness unsettled me more than if he had screamed or thrown something. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Noah, He held up a hand, silencing me. I don't need an explanation, he said coolly. This is unexpected, she mused, tilting her head at him. But not entirely unwelcome. Noah's gaze shifted to her, his expression unreadable. You always did like making an entrance, Trinity. My breath caught. I looked between them, my mind racing. You know each other? Trinity's smirk widened. Oh baby. Did you think I was just some random woman you happened to meet by chance? Cold realization slithered down my spine. Noah flicked ash from his cigarette, his movements deliberate. You should sit down, Emily. I shook my head, my pulse hammering. No. I need to understand what's going on. Trinity let out a soft chuckle, running a finger lazily over the bedsheets. You poor thing. You really thought this was all just fate. She stood up slowly, her silk robe slipping from her shoulders as she stepped toward me. That we just connected. I took a step back, suddenly feeling like the walls were closing in. Noah leaned forward, her touch as intoxicating as it was chilling. I knew exactly who you were before I ever laid eyes on you. I made sure we met. My chest tightened. Why? Noah's eyes darkened. Because she wasn't after you. Trinity's fingers trailed down my arm, featherlight. I was after him. The words crashed over me like a tidal wave. I looked back at Noah, searching for some kind of denial, some reassurance that this wasn't what it sounded like. But he only watched me with that same unsettling calm. Trinity sighed, stepping away, pacing leisurely as if she was enjoying drawing this out. Noah and we have history. Noah's expression remained unreadable. That's one way to put it. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You two were together? Trinity turned back to me, her green eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. Once upon a time, yes. She glanced at Noah. Before he decided I wasn't good enough for him. A sharp, bitter laugh left her lips. Before he ruined me. Noah exhaled another cloud of smoke, his jaw tightening just slightly. You ruined yourself, Trinity. I barely registered the gasp that escaped me. I was still struggling to process any of this. I don't understand. Trinity's gaze locked onto mine. He left me, Emily. Something that sent a shiver through me. Noah sighed, rubbing his temples. I didn't abandon you, Trinity. I walked away from something toxic. Her smile was all teeth. Toxic? Is that what you call it? Noah's lips pressed into a thin line. I know why you did this. Trinity folded her arms. Do you? His eyes flickered to me. You wanted to hurt me. And what better way than to seduce my wife? The room felt like it was spinning. My mind raced, trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even realized existed. No. Iwis parat? This was all just a game to you. Trinity tilted her head. Isn't that what we've all been playing? I turned to Noah, desperate for something to ground me. You knew. My voice trembled. You knew from the beginning. Noah nodded, tapping his cigarette against the ashtray. Of course I did. The air left my lungs. Trinity let out a small laugh. He let it happen, Emily. He watched it unfold. He wanted to see how far I'd go. I shook my head violently. Noah, tell me she's lying. But he didn't. He just held my gaze, his expression unreadable. Trinity leaned in, her lips brushing against my ear. You were just a pawn, darling. I stumbled back, my entire body trembling. No. Noah finally stood, his voice calm. You thought you had control, Emily. But you were never the one making the moves. Trinity smirked. Welcome to the real game. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. My mind whirled, trying to grasp onto something real, something solid, but everything I thought I knew had shattered into a million unrecognizable pieces. I stared at Noah, at the man I had loved, the man I had trusted, and then at Trinity, the woman who had made me feel things I never imagined, the woman who had played me like a puppet on a string. My voice was barely above a whisper. What happens now? Trinity smirked, stepping closer. Her fingers trailed down my arm, slow and deliberate, as if she still owned me. That depends, sweetheart. Do you want the truth? Or do you want the lie? I jerked my arm away, fire burning in my veins. I want my life back. Noah exhaled, flicking the ashes of his cigarette into the tray. That's the problem, Emily. Your life was never really yours. I felt my stomach twist. What the hell does that mean? Trinity crossed her arms, leaning against the dresser with an amused tilt of her head. It means we've been playing this game a lot longer than you think. I swallowed hard. I wasn't a part of your past. Noah's expression darkened. No, but you were the perfect piece to move. She smiled, and I hated how beautiful she still looked even now. So sweet, so trusting. Her eyes flickered with something dangerous. And so easy. My breath caught in my throat. Noah watched me carefully, as if waiting for me to shatter completely. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. You don't get to do this. You don't get to ruin me, and then act like it was inevitable. Trinity let out a small, mocking laugh. Oh, baby. You let me ruin you. I felt like I might be sick. Noah stubbed out his cigarette and pushed off the dresser, his voice calm. Enough. Trinity raised an eyebrow. Oh? Does it hurt you to see her like this? He didn't answer. She laughed softly. How ironic. You finally met a woman who could break you. And she wasn't even playing the same game. I turned to Noah, my voice raw. Why did you let this happen? His jaw tightened. Because I needed to see how far she'd go. Trinity scoffed.
No, darling.
You wanted to see how far you could push me. I felt my entire body tremble with rage. And me? What was I? Noah hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. I sucked in a shaky breath. You were never going to stop it, were you? His eyes met mine, unreadable. Would you have wanted me to? I hated that for a second, a single terrible second. I didn't know the answer. Trinity smirked, stepping between us. Well, this has been fun, but I think we both know how this ends. My heart pounded. And how is that? She tilted her head. With you walking away. Or with you staying and really playing. A shiver ran through me. Noah sighed. You've done enough damage, Trinity. She smiled. Oh, Noah. You still think you're in control. I took a step back. I'm done. Trinity's expression darkened. Are you? I met her gaze, steady this time. Yes. For the first time. Something flickered in her eyes. Noah let out a low breath. Then leave. Trinity stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned back to me. Stepping so close I could feel the warmth of her breath against my skin. Such a shame, she whispered. I could have made you so much worse. Then she turned on her heel and walked out. I stood there. My body shaking, my mind screaming. Noah watched me waiting. I met his gaze. You don't get to keep me. His lips pressed into a thin line. I never did. I turned and walked away. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't a pawn in anyone's game. But as I reached the door, something made me stop. My fingers trembled against the handle. The air behind me was heavy, charged, like something unspoken was still hanging between us. I could feel Noah's eyes on me, his presence thick and inescapable. Emily. His voice was softer now, almost hesitant. If you walk out now, there's no going back. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. I never wanted to go back, I murmured. Silence. Then a slow, deliberate chuckle from Noah. You're stronger than I thought. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see his reflection in the mirror across the room. He was standing there, hands in his pockets, watching me with that same unreadable expression. I never wanted to be strong, I admitted. Trinity's scent still lingered in the air. Vanilla and something darker. Something intoxicating. The memory of her touch burned against my skin like a brand I couldn't wash away. Noah took a step closer. But you are. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It was over. It had to be over. I took one last look at the room. The bed where I had betrayed my husband. The shadows where secrets had been whispered. The air still heavy with the weight of things unsaid. Then I turned the handle and stepped out into the cold, leaving it all behind. Or at least I told myself I did. Because as I walked away, I could still hear Trinity's voice in my head. Soft and mocking. Are you sure you're done? And deep down in the part of me I didn't want to face, I wasn't sure of the answer. I walked away. I should have felt free. I should have felt powerful. But all I felt was empty. The cold night air bit at my skin as I stepped outside, my heels clicking against the pavement. The city stretched before me bright and loud, indifferent to the storm that raged inside me. I wrapped my arms around myself, my breath shaky. My body still carried the scent of her, the ghost of her touch lingering on my skin. The heat of what we had done, the pleasure, the betrayal. It was all still there, burning beneath the surface. And then there was him, Noah. The man I thought I knew. The man who had been playing his own game while I had been blindly caught in the middle. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Who would I even call? What would I even say? The realization hit me like a blow to the stomach. I had spent years believing I was loved, cherished, safe. But the truth was, I had never been safe. I had never been anything more than a beautiful lie wrapped in silk sheets. A part of me wanted to run, to disappear into the night, and never look back. But another part, the part that still ached for answers, kept me standing there frozen in place. I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Measured.
Familiar.
I didn't need to turn around to know it was Noah. He stopped a few feet away, lighting another cigarette. The glow of the ember flickered in the darkness, illuminating his sharp, unreadable expression. I thought you left, he said simply. I let out a bitter laugh. So did I. He exhaled smoke, watching me through the haze. And yet here you are. I turned to face him. Why? His brow furrowed slightly. Why what? Why did you do this? Why let it happen? My voice wavered, but I didn't care. You could have stopped it. You knew what she was doing. Noah took another drag, considering me. I needed to know. Know what? He tilted his head slightly. If you choose her over me. Something inside me snapped. Are you serious? I took a step closer, my pulse pounding. This was a test? My entire marriage, my life. It was all just some twisted fucking game to you. Noah's lips pressed into a thin line. Not a game. A lesson. I let out a harsh breath, my hands shaking. Then tell me. Noah, what the hell did I learn? He studied me, his gaze dark and unreadable. That you wanted this just as much as she did. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't. Because deep down, in the parts of myself I had tried to ignore, I knew he was right. I had wanted it. I had let Trinity consume me. I had craved her touch, had surrendered to her completely. And Noah had known all along. Tears burned at the edges of my eyes. But I refused to let them fall. So what now? My voice was barely above a whisper. Noah took a slow step toward me, his presence overwhelming. That's up to you. I swallowed hard. There's nothing left, Noah. Whatever this was, it's ruined. We ruined it. He exhaled, the smoke curling between us. Maybe. Silence stretched between us, thick with everything we couldn't say. Finally, I shook my head. I can't stay. Noah's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He simply nodded, accepting the truth that had been hanging between us from the moment I had walked into that room and found him waiting. I saw something in Noah's eyes I hadn't expected. Pain. Real raw pain. For the first time, he wasn't the man who had orchestrated this chaos. He wasn't the cold, calculating mastermind. He was just Noah, the man who had once held me in the middle of the night, who had whispered that he would never let me go, the man who had still let me fall. I let out a shaky breath. I don't care who wins. Noah's gaze darkened. Liar. Maybe I was lying. Maybe a part of me wanted revenge. Maybe a part of me wanted to turn around and destroy her the way she had destroyed me, but I was done playing their games. Without another word, I walked away. This time I didn't stop. This time I didn't look back. I don't know how long I wandered the streets before I found myself standing outside a hotel, the neon sign flickering above me. My body felt numb, my mind exhausted. I checked in without a word, my hands shaking as I took the keycard and stepped into the elevator. The moment the door to my room closed behind me, I let out a ragged breath, pressing my forehead against the cool surface. I had no idea what came next. I had no plan, no answers. But for the first time in a long time, I was alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed. I peeled off my dress, letting it pool at my feet. The mirror across the room reflected a woman I barely recognized. Her skin was flushed, her lips swollen, her eyes filled with a storm of emotion she couldn't name. A part of me still craved Trinity's touch. A part of me still longed for Noah's embrace. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. I crawled into bed, wrapping the blankets around me like armor. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind raced, replaying every touch, every whispered word, every betrayal. And as I drifted somewhere between consciousness and dreams, a single thought echoed in my mind. What if this wasn't the end? What if I wasn't done after all?